17. No, Kate thought. This is my home. She almost said it out loud, but she didn't want to make a sound. There was someone in her apartment. She was still half asleep, but she was almost sure about the intruding noise that woke her up. Her pulse was already racing. Her heart floated up into her throat. Jesus God, no. She stayed very still, huddled near the head of her bed. A few more nervous seconds passed slowly, like centuries. Not a move from her, not a breath. Bone-white slants of moonlight played across the window panes, creating eerie shadows in her bedroom. She listened to the house, listened with total concentration to every creak and crack the old building made. She didn't hear anything unusual now, but she was sure she had. The recent murders and the news stories about the kidnappings in the Research Triangle area made her fearful. Don't be gruesome, she thought. Don't get melodramatic. She sat up slowly in bed and listened. Maybe a window had blown open. She had better get out of bed and check the windows and doors. For the first time in 4 months, she actually missed Peter McGrath. Peter wouldn't have helped, but she would have felt safer, even with dear old Peter out. Not that she was totally frightened or vulnerable. She could hold her own with most men. She could fight like hell. Peter used to say that he pitied the man who messed with her, and he meant it. He had been a little physically afraid of her. Well, prearranged fighting in karate dojos was one thing. This was the real thing. Kate slipped silently out of bed. Not a sound. She felt the roughness and coolness of the floorboards under her bare feet. It sent a wake-up call to her brain, and she moved into a fighting stance. Whap! A gloved hand came down hard over her mouth and nose, and she thought she heard cartilage crack in her nose. Then a large and very strong male body tackled her. All of his weight was pressing her into the cool, hard floorboards, pinning her down. Athlete. Her brain was computing every bit of information. She tried to stay clear and focused. Very powerful, trained. He was cutting off her air supply. He knew precisely what he was doing. Trained. It wasn't a glove that he was wearing, she realized. It was a cloth, thick with dampness. It was suffocating her. Was he using chloroform? No, it was odorless. Maybe ether. Halothane? Where would he get anesthetic supplies? Kate's thinking was getting fuzzy, and she was afraid she was going to black out. She had to get him off of her. Bracing her legs, she twisted her body hard to the left and threw all of her weight away from her attacker, toward the pale, shadowy bedroom wall. Suddenly, she was out of his grasp, free. "Bad idea, Kate," he said in the darkness. He knew her name. Chapter 18. The strike of a hawk. Timing was everything. Now, timing was survival, Kate understood. She tried desperately to stay alert, but the powerful drug from the dampened cloth had started to act. Kate managed a 3/4-speed sidekick, aiming at his groin. She felt something hard. Oh, shit. He was prepared for her. He had on an athlete's cup to protect his mushy genitals. He knew her strengths. Oh, God, no. How did he know so much about her? "Not nice, Kate," he whispered. "Definitely not hospitable. I know about your karate. I'm fascinated by you." Her eyes went wild. Her heart was hammering so loudly she thought he might hear it. He was scaring the living shit out of her. He was strong and fast and knew about her karate. Knew what her next move would be. "Help me! Somebody please help!" she shrieked as loudly as she could. Kate was just trying to scare him off with her screams. There was nobody within half a mile of the house on Old Ladies' Lane. Powerful hands like claws grabbed at her and managed to catch her arm just above the wrist. Kate howled as she ripped herself away. He was more powerful than any of the advanced black belts at her karate school in Chapel Hill. Animal, Kate thought. Savage animal. Very rational and crafty. Professional athlete? The most important lesson her sensei at the dojo had taught her broke through the numbing fear and chaos of the moment. Avoid all fights. Whenever possible, run from a fight. There it was, the best of hundreds of years of experience in martial arts. Those who never fight always live to fight another day. She ran from her bedroom and down the familiar narrow, twisting hallway. Avoid all fights. Run from a fight, she told herself. Run, run, run. The apartment seemed darker than usual that night. She realized that he'd closed every curtain and blind. He'd had the presence of mind, the calmness, the plan of action. She had to be better than him, better than his plan. A saying of Sun Tzu's hammered through her head. A victorious army wins its victories before seeking battle. The intruder thought exactly like Sun Tzu and her sensei. Could it be someone from her karate dojo? Kate managed to reach the living room. She couldn't see a thing. He had closed the curtains in there, too. Her vision and sense of balance were definitely way off. There were two of just about every shape and shifting shadow in the room. God damn him! God damn him! Floating in the soft, drug-induced haze, she thought of the other women who had disappeared in Orange and Durham counties. She'd heard on the news that another body had been found, a young mother of 2 children. She had to get out of the house. Maybe the fresh air would help to revive her. She stumbled to the front door. Something was blocking her way. He had pushed the sofa against the door. Kate was too weak to shoulder it away. In desperation, she screamed out again. "Peter! Come help me! Help, Peter!" Oh, shut up, Kate. You don't even see Peter McGrath anymore. You think he's a bloody fool. Besides, his house is 7 miles away. 7.3 miles. I checked. His voice was so calm and rational. Just another day at the office of psychopathology. And he definitely knew her, knew all about Peter McGrath, knew everything. He was somewhere close behind her in the electrifying darkness. There was no urgency or panic in his voice. This was a day at the beach for him. Kate moved quickly to her left, away from the voice, away from the human monster inside her house. Excruciating pain suddenly shot through her body, and she let out a low groan. She'd clipped her shin on the too low, too dumb-for-words glass table her sister Carol Ann had given her. It was Carol's well-meaning effort to class up the place. Oh, Christ, God damn it, how she hated that table. There was a shooting, throbbing pain in her left leg. "Stub your toe, Kate? Why don't you stop trying to run around in the dark?" He laughed, and it was such a normal-sounding laugh, almost friendly. He was enjoying himself. This was a big game for him, a boy-girl game in the dark. "Who are you?" she screamed at him. Suddenly, she thought, could it be Peter? Has Peter gone mad? Kate was close to passing out. The drug he had given her left her little strength to run anymore. He knew about her karate black belt. He probably knew she spent time in the weight room, too. She turned, and a bright flashlight shone right in her eyes. Blinding light was beaming at her face. He moved the flashlight away, but she still saw residual circles of light. She started to blink and could barely make out the silhouette of a tall man. He was more than 6 feet tall and had long hair. She couldn't see his face, just a glimpse of his profile. Something was wrong with his face. Why was that? What was the matter with him? Then she saw the gun. "No, don't," Kate said. "Please, don't." "Yes, do," he whispered to her intimately, almost like a lover. Then he calmly shot Kate McTiernan point-blank in the heart. Chapter 19. Early on Sunday morning, it got even worse on the Casanova case. I had to drive Sampson to Raleigh-Durham International Airport. He needed to be back on the job in Washington that afternoon. Someone had to protect the capital while I was working down here. The investigation was getting hotter and nastier now that the third woman's body had been found. Not only local police and FBI, but also field and game officials had joined in the physical search of the homicide site. Deputy Director Ronald Burns had been here last night. Why was that? Sampson gave me a bear hug at the American Airlines security gate. We must have looked like a couple of Washington Redskins linebackers after they won the Super Bowl, or maybe after they didn't even get into the playoffs in 1991. "I know what Naomi means to you," he whispered against the side of my skull. "I know some of what you're feeling. You need me again, you call." We gave each other a quick kiss on the cheek, like Magic Johnson and Isaiah Thomas used to do before their NBA basketball games. That drew a few stares from the peanut gallery milling around the metal detectors. Samson and I love each other, and we're not ashamed to show it. Unusual for tough-as-nails men of action like the two of us. Watch out for the Fed Bureau. Watch your back with the local folk. Watch your front, too. I don't like Ruskin. I really don't like Sykes, Samson continued to give me instructions. You'll find, Naomi. I've confidence in you, always have. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. The big man finally walked away and never once looked back. I was all alone down south, chasing monsters again. Chapter 20. I walked from the Washington Duke Inn to the Duke campus at around 1 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. I had just eaten a real North Carolina breakfast, a pot and a half of hot good coffee, very salty cured ham and runny eggs, biscuits and red-eye gravy, grits. I'd heard a country song playing in the dining room. One day, when you swing that skillet, my face ain't gonna be there. I was feeling crazy and on edge, so the pretty half-mile hike to the campus was good therapy. I prescribed it for myself and then listened to the doctor. The crime scene the night before had shaken me. I vividly remembered a time when Naomi was a little girl and I'd been her best friend. We used to sing Eensy Weensy Spider and Silkworm, Silkworm. In a way, she'd taught me how to be friends with Janny and Damon. She had prepared me to be a pretty good father. At the time, my brother Aaron used to bring Scoochie with him to the Capri Bar on 3rd Street. My brother was busy drinking himself to death. The Capri was no place for his little girl, but somehow Naomi handled it. Even as a child, she understood and accepted who and what her father was. When she and Aaron would stop at our house, my brother would usually be high, but not really drunk yet. Naomi would be in charge of her father. He would make the effort to stay sober when she was there. The trouble was, Scoochie couldn't always be around to save him. At 1 o'clock on Sunday, I had a meeting scheduled with the Dean of Women at Duke. I went to the Allen Building, which was just off Chapel Drive. Several administration offices were housed there on the 2nd and 3rd floors. The Dean of Women was a tall, well-built man named Browning Lowell. Naomi had told me a lot about him. She considered him a close advisor and also a friend. That afternoon, I met with Dean Lowell in his cozy office that was filled with thick old books. The office looked out across Magnolia and elm-lined Chapel Drive to the Few Quad. Like everything else about the campus, the setting was visually spectacular. Gothic buildings everywhere, Oxford University in the south. "I'm a fan of yours, through Naomi," Dean Lowell said, as we shook hands. He had a powerful grip, which I expected from the physical look of him. Browning Lowell was well-muscled, probably in his mid-30s, and good-looking. His sparkling blue eyes seemed relentlessly cheerful to me. Once upon a time he'd been a world-class gymnast, I remembered. He had attended Duke as an undergraduate and was supposed to star for the American team in the 1980 Olympics in Moscow. In the early part of that year, an unfortunate news story had broken that Browning Lowell was gay and having an affair with a basketball player of some renown. He had left the American team even before the eventual Olympic boycott. Whether the story was true had never been proved to my knowledge. Lowell had married, though, and he and his wife now lived in Durham. I found Lowell to be sympathetic and warm. We got down to the sad business of Naomi's disappearance. He had all the right suspicions and appropriate fears about the ongoing police investigation. It seems to me that the local papers aren't making simple, logical connections between the murders and the disappearances. I don't understand that. We've alerted all the women here on campus, he told me. Duke co-eds were being asked to sign in and out of dorms, he elaborated. The buddy system was encouraged whenever students went out at night. Before I left his office, he made a phone call to Naomi's dorm house. He said it would make access a little easier, and he wanted to do everything he possibly could to help. "I've known Naomi for almost 5 years, he told me. He ran his hand back through his longish